Hi, it's Laura at Marine18. Thanks for stopping by my channel today. Welcome or welcome back. This is my end of month recap video for August 2022. Filming a couple of days late. It is September now. And I'll be sharing all of the usuals, the general life updates, books I've read, decks that I've worked with or received, some animal learning, and some reading plans for next month. So I'll timestamp everything below as per usual because you know I ramble. So without further ado, general life updates. I have one big one that I'm excited to share and excited about, feeling really good about, and that is that I have moved from being a candidate druid in the AODA to being an apprentice druid in the AODA. Candidacy took me a bit more than a year, and apprentice takes a minimum of 2 years. And so I'm going to be having a whole new curriculum to work through. I have some aspects of that curriculum that I get to make decisions about and kind of design myself. So I'll be working on that for the next little while and getting that approved. And then get to learn a lot about revival druidry history and philosophy and about the impacts of humans on the environment is a big part of the second degree, and all kinds of exciting things. The AODA Druidry curriculum is, for the most part, all kind of public knowledge available online. So I'll link below to the second degree curriculum if you are interested in seeing what exactly I'm up to. But this has been, quite the process, and there's a process involved from going from candidate to apprentice that took me a while. And I'm really excited and happy and really looking forward to being an apprentice and completing that work. And being an apprentice or second degree means that I can be a mentor as well, which is really exciting to be able to be a mentor for folks who are in their candidate studies. So I'm planning on doing that. It's optional, of course. I'm planning on doing that though, and I'm really excited about that as well because I've benefited from having a great mentor. So really excited to be a druidry apprentice. Another fun thing that happened this month, just recently of course, was Chris making his debut on my YouTube channel. We had a lot of fun, and we are hoping to make another video together when the Star Trek original series deck by Telekiad, I think it is doing it, is going to come out. It's been a bit delayed as they're waiting for the convention circuit and that to be up and running, but there is an original series tarot in the works, so we'll definitely be back with more Star Trek tarot thoughts when that happens. We had a lot of fun. And then another highlight of technically actually September, because this only happened yesterday, and yesterday was September 1st, but I figured since it's fresh in my mind I would share it now instead of waiting a month, is that I ended up having a astrology consultation session with Avery Fawcett of Queer Magical, and this was really a great chat. We spent about an hour and a bit together, and I booked the astrology consult because it's something that I really want to do more of as I'm going into 2023, thinking about things I want to be doing, and partly thinking about things I want to be putting in my day planners, because it's also day planner ordering and planning season for me, which is a bit ridiculous because it's September. I want to be learning about and paying more attention to astrological transits and how they affect me. I'm pretty good in terms of observing the moon phases, and I have a kind of new moon, full moon practice established, but I'm very much an astrology beginner. I find astrology very overwhelming and very difficult to just kind of study one area because everything is, of course, so interconnected with everything else. It's hard to know what to emphasize. It's hard to know, what is going to be having the most effect, or why. And the why is always important to me. If I'm observing something like that, I want to know why. And so we had this consultation session where I kind of presented these questions to Avery and talked about, what I was interested in getting out of looking at transits and what my practice looked like now, and, you know, what I was and kind of wasn't interested in as well. And we pulled up my chart and had a look at that. And I feel like through that chat, I feel so much more better positioned to navigate trying to look at astrological transits. I have some great resources that I really love for kind of forecasts and discussions of, kind of more general transits that are not obviously natal transits that are specific to me anyway, but are, kind of astrological newsletters and things like that. Stars Dance Mystery School on Patreon is a great one that I'm a part of. But I wanted a little extra nudge and help, not nudge because I booked it, but help in terms of figuring out, how to best work with these great resources and also incorporate some consideration of my natal chart. And the consultation with Avery was great for that. So I had a really good time. And Avery and I have chatted here on YouTube together before. I'll link Avery's info below. So that's the highlights for August. Other than that, I'm just kind of clinging to the last days of summer for dear life. I just want to swim. And for it not to get cold. I love spooky season, but I really love the heat. So I'm just trying to be outside as much as possible. I did, however, in my work life, get sucked back into the university vortex and agreed to teach one class for the upcoming fall semester. So I'm going to be very busy between my full-time day job and teaching a third-year sociology class in the evenings. But I'm excited. It's good. It's good to be busy with good things. So that's my August. Moving on to decks that I've received this month. I've received 2 decks this month. They're very different. I feel like if I gave these 2 decks as exemplary of my tarot collection, it would be ridiculous. One of them you've already seen if you've watched my recent video, and that is Star Trek: The Next Generation tarot deck and guidebook. And this is, of course, the Insight editions. There are lots of Insight editions. Pop culture tarot decks. I'm sure everybody has seen at least some of them. And, maybe you own one, or maybe you have thoughts on them. If you do, tell me about it in the comments below. I never thought that I would get one of these, and then there was a Star Trek one, and it happened immediately. Surprise, surprise. So half of the reason that I got this was so that Chris and I could unbox it together, because I knew that we would have fun doing that. And I really like it, I have to say. I think that the choices for the major arcana are really well done. It does have the lazy pips. So 6, supposed to be cloaked, but obviously visible. Ships for the 6 of cloaks. 3 batleths for the 3 of batleths, which with red you might think was the fire suit, but is actually air, because they are swords. And then they have characters in the positions of the court cards. So this is fun. Do I think it will be the most profound reading deck? Perhaps not. I do think, though, that in the odd occasion when Chris lets me give him a reading, like on his birthday and things like that, this will probably be the new choice. Historically, it's been Deviant Moon, actually, has been his pick. But I think that this one will take its place, which is fun, and for me, makes worth having in my collection for sure. We're a Trekkie household, so that's fun. The second deck that I received this month, I purchased when I saw that it was available. This is a deck that has been on my wish list for quite a long time and has not been available. I didn't know that it was going to be available again, and kind of stumbled on it being available. And I didn't plan to buy another deck this month, but I treated myself. I really treated myself with this one, and I'm very excited because it's one that was it was on my wish list, but it was also kind of on the wish list in brackets in a way of like, I think this is out of print, I'll probably never have it, sort of thing. And that deck is the Hare Hokusai. It's a majors only deck, Il Meneghello, and by, of course, Osvaldo Managazzi. And, if you've had an Il Meneghello deck, you know how special, handmade these decks are. They come with the note that they're created by hand, and so any little imperfections are not really, imperfections. It comes with a little write-up that obviously I'm not going to read, but it talks about Osvaldo Managazzi's interest in Hokusai's work and considering different works by Hokusai to feature in the deck, and doing this at quite an old age. It says Master Managazzi, who is 86 years old, still exploring, deepening, and inventing, and this was written in 2016. Of course, Osvaldo Managazzi passed away fairly recently. And this was a limited edition deck. It's numbered number 202 of 250. And I haven't seen this for sale. And I got this new. I didn't get it on a eBay or anything. The backs of the deck is Osvaldo Managazzi, Il Meneghello logo there. And so I don't know how these just kind of came available, but I feel very lucky to have seen them when I did, because these are incredible. The camera is not going to capture, the color, and the cardstock is like thick, and they're huge. You don't know how big my face is, but they're big. They're very large cards. And I've just been looking through them and enjoying them. They didn't arrive too long ago, so there are full walkthroughs of this deck on YouTube, I'm sure. I really like the pairings of the artwork and the cards in this deck. I really like Hokusai's work as well. I bought Chris a Wave t-shirt once, years ago, in the moon card. I am really excited. So this was an unexpected treat. I really did not think that this was still available, but they had it on Hare BG, which I've ordered from before, so I was happy to get a copy of the Hare Hokusai. Sorry, I'm looking around where I can put things as I make a mess. So those are the decks that I've received this month. Other decks that I've worked with the most this month, my own my own deck, the an Arboreal Ogham, which is on Make playing cards. I have been using my own deck a lot. Obviously I'm biased, but I really like using it, so this has been a fun one. And I did a one-off, a one-day workshop on cosmology, in particular Celtic and other cosmologies that are multi-layered. So thinking about the upper world and middle world and underworld, and thinking about these with reference to the Ogham as well. And so that was really interesting and another highlight. I've also been reading a lot with the Fifth Spirit Tarot by Charlie Claire Burgess. I really love this deck. I love the cardstock of this deck, and I know I'm not alone in that. It's a beautiful linen cardstock. I like the inclusiveness of this deck. And I really like the pip style of this deck. I think of these as like, I called the Star Trek one a bit lazy pips. These to me are like fancy pips. They feel almost halfway between illustrated and pip. A little bit like, something like Pagan Otherworlds is a bit like that as well. Like it's scenic, but it's still a pip deck. And so that's kind of my favorite style, I think, is those fancy pips. So I've really been enjoying this deck, including the spreads that are in the back of the extended guidebook. So that's the other one that I've been reading with a lot, which I will put back in its box. Okay. Books I've read that I've finished this month. There are a lot of them this month. There are 9. I'm going to try to be efficient in going through them because there are 9. So I do write detailed reviews on Goodreads and on Storygraph. So if you're interested in extended thoughts, you can check my extended thoughts out there. I'll just share briefly what I've read and brief thoughts about them. So the first one I'll mention is Until We Are Free, Reflections on Black Lives Matter in Canada, edited by Rodney Diverlis, Sandy Hudson, and Cyrus Marcus Ware. So in July, I had drawn some TBR cards to get some reading suggestions for July, and one of the cards that I chose was a book about Black Lives Matter, and I didn't finish it in July. It took me just till the beginning of August to finish the book. I was only about halfway through, so I didn't talk about it in July. I'm talking about it now. This is the first one that I finished in the month of August, and I think it was good. It's a good collection. I will say that the whole collection is not really about Black Lives Matter. Some of it is. Other selections in the book are about particular ways that anti-Black racism has manifested in Canada, like in particular policies and moments in time and things like that, and different moments as well in anti-racist organizing and resistance. It's really well done. It's really wide-ranging. There's some poetry in here. There's some photos in here. There are some transcripts of conversations in here and essays. So it's very kind of internally diverse in terms of format as well, which I liked a lot and definitely recommend for sure. This was good. I also read as a advanced reading copy, thank you publisher NetGalley, The Path of the Hedge Witch, Simple Natural Magic and the Art of Hedge Riding by Joanna Vanderhoven. And Joanna Vanderhoven is a witch and a druid, and she writes about both witchcraft and druidry, but inevitably I think, because she is both and practicing both kind of in tandem with each other, which is entirely possible. Her druid books feel really witchy to me, and her witchcraft book felt really druid-like to me. And, I was curious to see how she would write about witchcraft specifically. So that's why I picked this book. I think that it was fine. I've liked some of her other books better. Some of that may just be I've read her other books that are more focused on druidry, and that's just more in line with what I do. But I thought that this was good as a kind of very 101 level witchcraft book, in that it is accessible, it's approachable, it doesn't assume that the reader knows very much about anything related to witchcraft. It's very non-dogmatic, very kind of cultivate your own path in terms of its orientation, which I appreciate. And a lot of what I like about Johanna Vanderhoven's work that I've read before is also true about this book. So there was lots of things that I did like about it, What I found a bit frustrating about it, though, given that it's called The Path of the Hedge Witch, Simple Natural Magic and the Art of Hedge Riding, is that the hedge and hedge riding part of the book was very short. Most of the book is covering things that are not only not hedge work specific, but not even witchcraft specific, like moon phases and herbs and working with elements and the wheel of the year. These are quite, like, I don't say generic is the wrong word, but they're quite widespread practices in a lot of different traditions in one way or another. So I feel like it kind of lost its main focus. In some ways, like the focus that I was most interested in was de-emphasized. So that I did not love. But as a general kind of witchcraft book, I thought it was pretty good. I read World Druidry, A Globalizing Path of Nature Spirituality by Dr. Larissa White. And Dr. White is also a member of AODA Druidry as well. And this is a book that is the result of a World Druid survey that was conducted very recently, over a couple of years. I want to say 2019, 2020. And so Dr. White got a whole bunch of responses, like hundreds of responses from different druids around the world. So 725 completed questionnaires, and druids responded from 34 countries around the world, with response distributions balanced along lines of age, gender, level of experience in druidry, membership in groups, etc. So it's basically a snapshot of what druids are doing in their practices right now, or now-ish, very recently. As recent as you're going to get in a scholarly publication like this. And so druids are asked questions about everything from their kind of ontological beliefs to how they engage with seasonal change, to how they engage with their natural environment, to, you know, how, if at all, they experience discrimination or need to be private about their practices for fear of experiences like that, how open as druids they are in the workplace, how people include their family members in their druidry practice if they live with folks who are not also druids, druiding with children, all kinds of things. And I really, really, really liked this. I just found it really interesting. And it's full of quotes from different druids' responses to this survey. And it's given me a ton of ideas. It has felt validating in some ways, where some, including some of the kind of negative experiences that I've had or concerns that I've had, other folks have talked about as well. I liked reading about how different druids are engaging in activist work, like social justice work and environmentalist work from a druid perspective. This was really well done, and she has even explained quantitative methodologies in ways that my very qualitative brain can understand, which I very much appreciated as well. The entire survey text is in here. There's a bunch of interesting appendices, lots of graphs and charts, and different, quantified deviations in terms of where, for example, druids who are members of one particular order may be way more likely to do a particular thing and way less likely to do others. So there's this kind of comparative aspect for people who are interested in druidry, not necessarily learning how to be a druid or how to practice druidry, but who are interested in kind of contemporary spiritual and religious communities, contemporary pagan communities. Not all druids are pagans, but you know what I mean. And what they're doing. Like, this is a really great and very accessible, I think, but scholarly work. Really, really good. 5 stars. And not just because I'm a druid. It was really well done. So that was great. I got an advanced reader copy of my most anticipated novel of the year. That was A Minor Chorus by Billy Ray Belcourt. I have read one book, and it was a memoir of Billy Ray Belcourt before. He's also a poet, and I knew him, him being a poet, that A Minor Chorus would be beautiful. It's a novel that follows a Indigenous queer doctoral student who is going to write a novel and goes to the community where he grew up and talks to different people, and you learn about this character's life. His name actually isn't given in the book. And it was incredible. Billy Ray Belcourt is an incredible writer, and I very much recommend Billy Ray Belcourt's work, and I recommend this as much as the memoir, History of My Brief Body, which I gave 5 stars. I gave A Minor Chorus 5 stars. I think that his work is incredible, and I don't really know what else to say about it besides that I think it is incredible. I read another advanced reader copy, The Narrow Cage and Other Modern Fairy Tales. This is a translated collection of fairy tales by Vasily Eroshenko. Eroshenko was a Ukrainian author. He was born in, I think, 1890 or thereabouts. He was a definitively left-leaning person. So there's this great biographical chapter at the beginning of the book, and it talks about him meeting Kropotkin and Emma Goldman and all these like anarchist figures that I'm very familiar with and very familiar with their work. And Eroshenko was also an Esperanto enthusiast, an Esperanto speaker. He spent a lot of time in East Asia, traveled a lot, and he wrote these fairy tales. And a lot of the fairy tales are about talking animals, like they're absolutely fairy tales, and they kind of explore, like most of them to me are focused on kind of political debates that were internal to the early 1900s global far left, we'll say. So anarchists, Marxists, kinds of conversations and debates, and it's a very specific kind of fairy tale and a very particular kind of historical context that is, I think, needed to make these fairy tales make sense. I thought they were just charming, though some of them were quite gruesome as well. But I thought that they were really well done, and the translation was really well done as well, so I enjoyed that. I read I have a cat meowing at me. I'm sure you can hear him in the background. Daryl is bugging me for FOOD, but Daryl is not quite time. So you're going to have to wait, my friend. You're going to have to wait. I'm sorry. The everyday challenges of filming videos at home. Anyway, I read a novella or a very short novel, The Two Doctors Gorski by Isaac Fellman. This one is a kind of fantasy set in a university, and it's hard to talk about without giving a lot of spoilers. I would go read the description to see if it's something that you might be interested in. It follows a graduate student, and it's kind of set in a world where magic is studied in university context, and I thought it was good. I also thought the first half of the book was more interesting than the second, which is not necessarily great because it means that the kind of peak of the book was not as exciting as the world that was established to set it up. That was my thoughts on that. But if it looks of interest to you, you should check it out. I thought it was okay. I also read a short novella, Forest of Memory by Mary Robinette Kowal. This I had picked up because I really like Mary Robinette Kowal's Lady Astronaut of Mars series. I really, really like that series. I have liked every book in that series, and I hadn't really read anything else by Mary Robinette Kowal. So when I saw this, I was like, yeah, I'll pick that up. And The Forest of Memory is an interesting one because it deals with kind of the reliability of memories and, the relationship between memories and particular kinds of physical objects, and antiques and things like this. It's quite an interesting exploration, I would say. The world is interesting. The main kind of character is interesting. But there are deliberate misspellings throughout this book for reasons that are explained in the context of the narrative. Like, they are absolutely deliberate. It's not that the book is full of typos. I have encountered books like that before. This is not one. And I found it so distracting that it negatively impacted my ability to enjoy this otherwise, I would say, very good book. So that is my review. The misspellings bugged me. In a Forest of Memory by Mary Robinette Kowal, who I love, and I cannot wait for the next Lady Astronaut of Mars book, because I love those books. Okay, continuing to go. I'm trying to be really efficient in the books, because I know that this video is still going to be long because of all the things. Okay, 2 books left to mention. I read The Fifth Spirit Tarot Guide by Charlie Claire Burgess, and I read it end to end. And, that's why I mentioned I've been reading with the Fifth Spirit Tarot a lot this past month. And I buddy read this with my pal Sarah from Waterchild Tarot. And so we Zoomed and chatted, and we, split up the book into a couple of sections and read it and chatted about it. And we also shared some readings together with some of the spreads that are in the back of the book. And I had a fabulous time. I really enjoyed buddy reading, and I really enjoyed the book. Inevitably, you're going to have differences of, thought or analysis when it comes to tarot and card meanings and things like that with any author, and that's completely fine. That's not a shortcoming or a benefit of any book, but I really, really liked this book. I like how the author really explains their choice of symbolism in the book. So, them having a wasp's nest on the 5 of Wands, just as an example that I opened to, it's clearly explained. It's not just kind of generic descriptions of card meanings that are not deck specific. So I really liked that. This is also a deck that feels very inclusive to me in a lot of ways that a lot of decks don't. And the book felt that way as well. I have been let down in the past by some books that purported to be inclusive, some decks that have purported to be inclusive, some books that have purported to be queer in perspective but aren't not. And I was not let down in any of those ways by this book, and I'm very pleased with that. Again, inevitably, there are going to be cards where the author emphasizes, particular meanings or has particular keywords for the card that in the way that I read would not necessarily be my first choice or not necessarily how I understand that card. But again, that's going to happen with any book, when you've been reading for tarot for any kind of length of time. So that's not in any way a criticism. I found it really great to discuss the book with Sarah, and we could bounce some ideas off of each other. I really appreciated that. I love a buddy read. So I had a really good experience there, and I really liked this book. Now, this deck is going to be mass market. It's been picked up by Hay House. It is not, to my knowledge, available yet. I will say that I really hope that this book is preserved for the mass market version. I know there's some cards that are going to have to be changed. The Mr. Rogers card, for example, is going to have to be changed to be mass market. But I hope that the substance of this makes it into the mass market edition, because this has a lot more in it than the little book that comes inside the deck. This is sold separately. So I don't know if this is still available at this point, but if you have this deck and you like this deck and you didn't pick up the separate book, if you can get a copy, I would definitely suggest it. It is worth a read through, in my opinion. So I really enjoyed that. The last book I'll mention is a novel that I read in August, and that's City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty. This is a book that has been recommended to me so many times by people who I love and respect and share reading tastes with, who have said, you will like this book. And I've just never gotten around to it. I have had City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty sitting on my e-reader since the last time I traveled internationally, which was years ago at this point, and I never got to it on the trip, and it just kind of sat there. And this month I read it. I gave it 5 stars. I loved it. City of Brass is a epic fantasy. It's the first in a trilogy, and it follows a female protagonist, and it is certainly inspired by the ancient kind of Near East, Northeast Africa regions, and has a lot of political maneuvering in it, a lot of political strategizing in it, which I enjoy. It's multi-perspective writing, which I also really enjoy. It has djinn and magic in it, which I love, and I love the world building in this book. I love the female protagonist in this book. I really, really, really loved City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty. So I am reading the sequel right now. And I almost never do this, reading a trilogy, in quick succession, because typically I've been reading a lot of fiction, at least in the last year or so, that's newer. So I often find myself waiting. Like, I'll read the first book in a trilogy and the second won't be out yet, so I'll be reading them a year apart. The entire trilogy is out. And I'm excited because I haven't gotten to read a full trilogy in a while, and this one, I really, really like it. And I'm liking the second book better than the first, actually. I'm 60% through the sequel to City of Brass, and I like it already better than book 1. So very excited. Special shout out to my friend who is Sonia. She has a channel as well on YouTube. I'll link her below. She does some kind of AuthorTube, BookTube discussion, and she, I think, is the first one who recommended it to me, and right on. 5 stars. I loved it, which brings me to the reading plans for September. I'm not going to pick any TBR cards this time because I have a plan for a readathon, and I'll link the readathon below. It's one that I learned about from my friend Katie Flowers, and that is Series September. And this is a readathon that has a bingo card associated with it, so you can try to read different prompts and thereby get a bingo on the card. I'm confident that I will be able to. Since I'm reading the sequel to City of Brass now, I'm going to read the 3rd book next, and this will help me in Series September, which is all about reading books that are a part of, not necessarily a trilogy. Most of the ones I read seem to be trilogies, but a series of any length, finishing up series, starting a new series, and reading series that have been adapted into television, reading series that you own but you haven't read yet, all kinds of these prompts for Series September. So that is going to be my plan. I'll make a video once I'm done my bingo, because I'm definitely going to make it, just based on what I'm reading now. So very excited about that. Coming towards the end, animal of the month. My animal of the month for August is Hare, and Hare is from the Druid Wisdom. No, it's not Druid Wisdom. Druid Wisdom's the little tiny one. This is the Druid Animal Oracle, Philip Cargom. There's also a Druid Plant Oracle that I don't own, the Druid Animal Oracle. And so, before learning about Hare in kind of spiritual significance, which I will get to in just a second, the first thing I decided to learn about, just so that I could share it here with you all, because I wasn't sure, is the difference between rabbits and hares. And one of the things that I learned is the reason that I didn't know the difference between rabbits and hares, and that is that several species with hare in their name are actually rabbits. So, confusing, right? Hares are, in fact, different than rabbits. They are larger. They have larger ears. Genetically speaking, they actually have more chromosomes than rabbits, which is interesting. And the hare lives above ground in a nest instead of underground in a burrow. And you can see here that there's a nest on the card with eggs in it, which, alludes to Easter and its association there, but it's also relevant to the behavior of the animal hare who nests above ground, which means that baby hares are born a lot more independent than baby rabbits who have the extra protection of being born in a burrow. They're born hairless. They don't open their eyes right away. They spend time in the burrow with the family, very dependent on the parents, and hares don't do that so much. Daryl's climbing on top of stuff behind me, trying to get attention. Not the best. Not the best, Daryl. You're going to have to wait a few more minutes for snacks. I'm sorry. The other thing about hares, unlike rabbits, is that they don't live in large groups, whereas rabbits tend to. In terms of the significance of the hare in the oracle, and something to learn about them in that way, I find that if I put my face behind the card focuses better, sorry. The hare is associated with intuition and particularly intuitively navigating change in a good way. And hares were sacred in the ancient Celtic world for bringing luck. And of course, perhaps unsurprisingly, if you know anything about hares or rabbits, are associated with fertility and birth and also rebirth. So statues of hares would be buried with folks and put in burials to facilitate rebirth. Hares are also associated with the equinoxes. So that's some learning about hare. Now, instead of picking an animal, and I've been picking an animal every month, instead of picking an animal right now out of the deck, I will be learning about bats for September. And I'm going to be doing that with my friend T over at Cosmic Creeper. Probably many of you know her channel, which is Cosmic Creeper's Tube here on YouTube. And on her Patreon, she does animal gnosis, and we look at a different animal every month. And so I'm always doing that with the group in addition to whichever animal I choose. But for September, when bat was chosen, it just kind of called out to me as one that I would like to focus on. There's a lot of different bat species where I live, so I'm excited to just explore bats. And so I'll have a card or two that depict a bat to show you when I talk about that next month. I know I've got a few bat cards in my collection anyway, so I'm looking forward to that. So that is my recap for August 2022. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll see you again soon in another video. I've got some plans for some more tags for September, including another Do I Have That Card video, and some other tags and some other ideas as well. So I will see you again soon. Wish you all a happy September.